Sudan's capital Khartoum is once again at the center of intense fighting as the war between the army and the rapid support forces escalates. The Sudanese army launched its biggest operation in months, striking RSF positions with artillery and airstrikes. This has brought the focus back into the raging civil war in Sudan. But what is the conflict all about, and what's next? The Sudanese army has launched a renewed offensive in Khartoum, attempting to retake control of key areas that form Sudan's greater capital. The army stated it had crossed brigades into Khartoum and Bahari, but the rival Rapid Support Forces or the RSF countered these claims. The RSF says it has thwarted the army's attempts. As always, independent verification of these claims is difficult in an active war zone. The surge in fighting came at a critical time. Sudan's army commander General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan addressed the UN General Assembly in New York just hours before the army launched its offensive. In his speech, Burhan made it clear that any peace efforts in Sudan hinge on the RSF laying down its arms.
جراء حرب شنتها مجموعة تمردت على الدولة بدعم سياسي ولوجستي محلي وإقليمي، وتابعتم حجم الجرائم والفظائع والانتهاكات التي ارتكبتها تلك المجموعة المتمردة ضد الشعب السوداني وكيان الدولة السودانية.
As Burhan was delivering his speech in New York, the RSF leader Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo released a message. He said the RSF was open to a nationwide ceasefire, something he has promised in the past, to allow much-needed humanitarian aid to reach civilians. However, this pledge of peace does not line up with the realities on the ground. The RSF has continued its own offensives this month, particularly in Al-Fashir, the capital of North Darfur state, where the humanitarian crisis is becoming even more severe. Al-Fashir is one of the last strongholds of the Sudanese army and its former rebel allies in the wider Darfur region. This area has been the site of some of the worst violence in the conflict. The RSF and its allied militia have been accused of carrying out ethnically targeted attacks, with civilians suffering the brunt of the violence. The United Nations and human rights organizations have documented atrocities including summary executions, sexual violence, and abductions, especially in Al-Fashir. The UN has warned that if the city falls completely into RSF hands, it could trigger even more widespread ethnic violence and human rights violations. To understand how Sudan reached this point, we need to go back to 2021. After years of dictatorship under Omar al-Bashir, Sudan appeared to be on the verge of transitioning into civilian rule. However, that process was cut short when the army and the RSF, the two forces that had initially cooperated to oust Bashir, turned against each other in a struggle for power. The RSF, originally formed out of notorious Janjaweed militia in Darfur, had grown into a powerful military force under Hemedti's leadership. At the same time, General Burhan, leading the Sudanese army, wanted to secure his control over the country's future. These tensions came to a head in April 2023, when both sides accused each other of plotting to take over. Fighting broke out and the conflict rapidly escalated, with the RSF seizing large parts of Khartoum and other key cities. What followed has been nothing short of a humanitarian disaster. Over 10 million people have been displaced within Sudan, and hundreds of thousands have fled to neighboring countries. Large parts of Sudan are now facing severe food shortages, with some regions teetering on the edge of famine. The fighting has devastated country's infrastructure, making it difficult for aid to reach those who need it the most. Both sides have been accused of human rights violations, including attack on civilians, looting, and using hospitals as military bases. Diplomatic efforts to stop the violence, led primarily by the United States, have so far failed. The most recent talks in Switzerland were boycotted by the Sudanese army, and the RSF has shown little interest in halting its offensives. Foreign powers have also played a complicated role in the conflict. Burhan has hinted at international meddling, particularly from countries supplying the RSF with money and weapons, although he has not named specific nations. Meanwhile, both the army and the RSF have reportedly received backing from different regional actors, further complicating the prospects for peace.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like our videos and hit the bell icon to stay updated with the latest.